but my name is Lauren Keeler. I am the assistant counsel here. I oversee our policy development, and this animals on campus policy is one that Kelly and I get a lot of questions about. So we thought that we'd, get with you all today and go over the policy generally and hopefully address a lot of questions that you all have.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Cogar, and I'm the Senior Director of the Center for Student Accessibility. And I will field any questions that you might have after Lauren gives her talk about the laws and those types of regulations.
Yeah. And feel free if you have questions. I know we're having technical difficulties. You can write questions in the chat. Cassie will let us know. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So you can wait until the end if you want to add all your questions at the very end, but feel free to interrupt us. It'll go by quicker. Okay, perfect. This is just a brief slide really quickly about our University Counsel office. Like I said, I oversee our policy development, but we also have 2 other attorneys. So you can contact any one of us if you ever have any questions, not just about policies. We handle all contract review, advise a bunch of different units on campus. So if you ever have any questions about this policy or just generally, you can reach out to any one of us. So like Kelly said, I'm just going to kind of give a brief background. It's a lot of words, but ultimately where we start at with the policy is that, we recognize that animals are dangerous in certain situations. So the policy, we want to promote a safe campus environment. As a baseline, animals aren't allowed on campus. However, there are certain laws, federally and state laws, that we have to follow. So we do allow animals in certain instances that we'll go over on campus, whether that be service animals, emotional support animals, or pets. So those are the 3 main exceptions that we're going to talk about today. And this is just a little bit more background, but the laws that we have to comply with are the Americans with Disabilities Act, so the ADA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Those govern us federally, as well as the Fair Housing Act. The ADA governs our compliance with service animals on campus. Fair Housing Act covers emotional support animals on campus. So they both cover different things. Okay, so the big distinction is between service animals and emotional support animals. So service animals can only be dogs or miniature horses. Kelly and I were just talking, we have no miniature horses on campus. Yes, so just dogs right now. But those animals are trained to perform a very specific task for someone that has a disability and needs an accommodation. Those animals, and we'll go into this a little bit more, can go anywhere that their handler can go on campus. However, emotional support animals can honestly be any kind of animal. Last time we talked about this, there were rabbits, right? Emotional support rabbits, cats, turtles. So it's not, so it's not limited to just dogs and miniature horses. So these could be all kinds of animals. They're not trained to perform a specific task. They're just there to support their owner emotionally. However, a big difference as well is that they can only be in the residence halls. So you should never come across an emotional support animal in your classroom or anything like that, because they should only be in their residence hall, and specifically in the dorm room itself. They can't be in the common areas of the dorm. They can only be in the dorm room and then taken outside to use the restroom and come back in, or any public areas on campus, like if they need to go for a walk on the sidewalk. I think this just covers a lot of what we just talked about. But again, a service animal is only going to be a dog or a mini horse, and it can go anywhere on campus, anywhere on university property, university buildings, spaces open to the public. We can exclude service animals if they are going to pose a health or safety risk to others. And there are other things that we're going to talk about where if they're acting up or causing a disruption, that you can ask the handler to remove the service animal. But generally, service animals can go anywhere on campus with their handler. So under the ADA, you are only allowed to ask 2 questions to someone with a service animal. So you can ask them, is your service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has your service animal been trained to perform? So those are under federal law, the only things that we can ask. We cannot require that they wear, the animals wear a certain vest. Can't require that the handler carries around, an ID or something identifying the animal. Can't ask them to have their animal perform, the work or the task itself. If they answer those questions, yes and yes, or tell you what the task is, that's it. That's where the inquiry ends, unless the animal, acts up. We kind of set this up though, so if you do not know if the animal is a service animal, so someone gave us this example, someone brings their animal into the library, it doesn't have a vest on, you're not really sure, is this a service animal? Is it a pet? What, purpose is it? You can ask that person or say, excuse me, there are no pets allowed in the library. And if they follow up and tell you that it's not a pet, it's a service animal, then you go back to those 2 other questions that we just talked about. But again, if they tell you if it's a service animal and they answer those questions, that's where federally we have to stop. If they tell you if it's an emotional support animal, like I said, those cannot be anywhere on campus other than a dorm, so you can ask them to leave. Cassie, do you mind flipping? It's not, sorry. No, you're fine.
Is that the one that you need?
Yes. So I think it's a little, hopefully they can all see it. It's a little cut off at the top. But these are the handler responsibilities I was referring to. So just generally, the handler is responsible for their service animal. So they have to maintain control of the animal at all times. The animal shouldn't just be like running around your classroom. It has to have vaccinations and licenses. It should be responsive to its handler. And just generally, we don't have like a per se leash rule, but it needs to be in the handler's control. That's how we would describe it. So whether that's harnessed, leashed, tethered, or on the handler's person at all times. And again, we would love if everyone registered their service animal. I know that Kelly would for sure, would make her life easier. And we recommend it, but we cannot require that anyone register their service animal with us. We do require though that you register your emotional support animal. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But it would make things easier for purposes of facilities and things like that. But again, we can't require it. So removal. So if all those things if they're not complying with all those things we said about responsibilities, the animal is barking in class, it's, not housebroken, it's making a mess, it bites someone, God forbid, things like that. There are certain instances where you can remove the animal from class. So in those scenarios, we would always recommend, telling the student and their animal to leave and immediately contacting the Center for Student Accessibility. Report the incident, tell them what happened. Kelly may follow up to get more information, but we recommend that as the, best case scenario when you are removing an animal from class. So we have record of it. And CSA can address that with the student going forward. Do you have anything else to add on that? Sorry.
Just that I know that sometimes faculty and even the staff in the residence halls are kind of fearful that they'll make a mistake. But if you were following the policies and you've documented what the issue is, you are fully you fully have the right to ask the animal to be removed from class or to be removed from the residence hall. If they're barking, if they're lunging at anyone, if they're not housebroken, anything that would cause problems either in a living situation or in a classroom, the law will back you up on that. It's just important to document it, reach out to my office, And if it's a service animal that hasn't registered with us, I can still ask to meet with the student and kind of observe myself how the animal behaves, and let them know if we feel the animal needs more training in order to fit in on campus.
And last bullet, if there is a dog bite, if the dog does, or miniature horse, does bite anyone, you should contact EKU police immediately, because there are other things that we have to comply with in terms of that. So this is at the state level, everything. Oh, go ahead.
Someone in the chat said, what if the service animal is wearing an item of clothing that has profanity on it?
I would ask the
yeah.
person to either cover up the
Mhm.
shirt or remove the shirt. Because that's just, if it's in a classroom or in the residence hall, it's I
A
just think it's
disruption.
socially, it's unacceptable, and it does disrupt
Considered
class
disruption.
because people are either aghast or they're cracking up because
Mhm.
there's profanity on the dog's shirt. So yeah, I would ask them to turn it inside out so the profanities aren't being shown. That's fine.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anyone else right now? Okay. So like I was saying, there is a Kentucky statute that essentially applies all of the things that we have to comply with the ADA for service animals, also apply to service animals in training, specifically service dogs in training. So really the only main distinction is that anyone who is training a service animal has to have an ID card that verifies themselves as a trainer of service animals. So someone who is just, a handler doesn't have to have any kind of ID card like that. But under state law, if a student is training an animal to be a service animal, they have to have an ID card on their person at all times. And again, they have to even though they are training the dog still has to comply, and the handler has to comply with all of the responsibilities that we set forth for service animals on our campus. So that gets into emotional support animals. So like I said, these animals aren't trained to do anything in specific, in particular, like a service animal. It can be a cat, it can be a rabbit, it can be a turtle. But they are only allowed, like I said, in university housing. So you should never encounter one in your classroom, hopefully. And we do, unlike service animals, we do require, and we are allowed to require, that someone submits at least 30 days in advance a request to have an emotional support animal on campus in their dorm. So every single emotional support animal on campus is registered with Kelly's office. How many do we have right now?
I want to say almost 130.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, and
We have a lot.
the unfortunate part of that is we require 2 pieces of documentation from a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a general practitioner, whoever's treating the student for the mental health issue. And unfortunately, what we've seen is if we say no, that your documentation doesn't meet the criteria, they will go to the doctor, and the doctor will say exactly what the student tells them to say in order for us to accept it. And we've seen that there are people who do this, and then we find out they really don't need an emotional support animal. They either leave it or they give it up later on. So it's difficult to work with even the mental health and the medical professionals to try to get them to understand the importance of regulating this more stringently. So that is something we have a problem with, but they have to give us that documentation. And if the animal requires vaccinations, turtles don't, then they have to give us the animal's vaccination and update it every time it's due for updated shots.
And again, similarly to service animals, emotional support animals and their student owners, have to follow the policy, and they have pretty much the same responsibilities as the handler of a service animal does. They have to maintain control of the animal at all times. The animal does need to be leashed if they are going to take it outside, or in an animal carrier. I guess you wouldn't walk a turtle, but if they're taking it outside at any point, it needs to be on a leash. It can't be in the common spaces, can't be in the kitchen, can't be in the living room, things like that. It definitely has to be housebroken. And should be non-disruptive to others, you know, in the living environment. I think that's where we see most of our issues, probably in housing. Just a lot of animals in a lot of small spaces.
Right,
So-
a lot of disruption, noise, and a lot of students who say their animal is housebroken and it's not. This past semester, for some reason, we had several students that said that their animal was housebroken. And, they said that they used, puppy pads. I'm like, that's not housebroken.
Right.
If your dog is using the restroom, in the residence hall, it is not housebroken, and so it cannot come to class or to campus.
But emotional support animals can be removed for all of those reasons that we talked about before. Excessive barking, it's not under control, it's not housebroken. An emotional support animal can be removed.
Mhm.
And then the last group that we're going to talk about are pets. So pets are typically welcome in public outdoor spaces. They are not allowed under any circumstances inside any classrooms unless it meets one of these conditions. So you can have an animal in your classroom. It has to be clearly stated on the course syllabus. You have to note the specific dates that you want the animal to be present in advance. It just gives the students notice that you're going to have an animal in class. And the animal can't be kept, you can't just like keep the animal in your office while it's outside of class time and then bring it into class and then bring it back. It needs to be out of a university building before and after. And the animal needs to be registered with CSA, and vaccination records need to be with CSA before the animal can come to one of your classes. So can a service animal or emotional support animal come into my class? Only a service animal can come into your class. Like we discussed, emotional support animals should never be anywhere other than the residence hall of the owner that they belong to. Do service animals have to wear a vest or a patch identifying themselves? No, we can't require any, you know, formal certification. They can, you know, voluntarily go to CSA and self-register, but we cannot require that they do or that they identify themselves as service animals. When can I ask someone to remove their service animal? Like we said, if the animal is out of the handler's control, it's creating a disruption. You can always request that they leave. Always report it to CSA and let them know that this happened. And we'll assess from there, and they could ultimately not be allowed to return to campus if there's a safety issue or things of that nature.
So when you say notify Center for Student Accessibility, is it like you ask them for their information and they say, my name's Ashley, and then I say, hey, Ashley had a problem with their dog, like what info are we supposed to get from them to notify you?
Yeah, if it's in the classroom, usually the faculty member
Yeah.
will know, but if you're out on campus, and you ask those two questions, you just be friendly, say, oh, what's your name? What's your dog's name? And then usually we can
Track it that
track
way.
it that
Okay.
way, or if you know, and can identify what type of dog it is, what it looks like, we can look for that as well.
Yeah, but if it's in the classroom, I would say
Yeah.
the student's name, what type of animal, and what happened. I think that's the most helpful, is describing the incident and why you removed the animal from class, what behavior they were exhibiting that required you to move the animal from class. I think we just answered the last one. What should I do if I see a service animal and it's causing disruptions? Okay. Oops, let me go back. Sorry, I skipped a slide. Okay, there we go. And these were just general, you know, service animal or emotional support animal. What's the difference? Again, a service animal will only ever be a dog or a mini horse. And an emotional support animal can be any kind of animal. It does not have to be trained to perform a specific task. It can be anything from, like we said, a turtle, cat, lizard, things like that. And finally, where can a service animal go? Like we said, it can go anywhere that their handler can go. There are a few exceptions, as long as it's not, you know, It could be excluded from things like a research lab if it's going to possibly contaminate research, things like that, but generally can go wherever its handler can go.
And there is a law that looks at competing conditions. So if someone was highly allergic to dogs and they were in that class, then we'd have to meet with both people and try to find a way to mediate the issue. And it may be that the person with the animal attend online virtually. Although we can't make the professor do that, but that would be one of the solutions. Or perhaps they could just have the animals sit outside in the hall where they could see them, and especially if the service animal is truly trained and well behaved, that might also be an answer for that.
Well, that is all that we have for you, but if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
You're saying if they're training a service animal, they have to have the card. So we see a lot of people come here and train them down steps. If they don't, if the handler doesn't have the card and they say they're training, you know, they gotta leave till they come back with the card, or
I would I would, again, like in a classroom, tell them to leave, tell them that, you know, that they have to have an ID on their person at all times. And then I would also contact CSA and just let them know. The more information that they have, the better.
And if it's a building that's here in the library, you can ask them to leave and bring back.
come back with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it should be on their person at all times.
And not all states are like that. Some states
Right.
will not allow a dog that is in training to be on campus. And I wish that Kentucky would change that law, because we have people who say they're training their own dog, and they may not be truly taught how to be a trainer for service animals. So there are a lot of ways that they find loopholes in the state and the federal law that unfortunately makes it difficult for those who truly need either a service animal or emotional support animal.
Is the ID just something that says like service animal trainer or?
Yeah, it'd be just like any kind of ID if you have a specialty that you do, almost like a business card. But that brings up another issue. There are people online who will
Yeah.
say, we will register your emotional support animal, and they charge the person, the student usually anywhere from $75 to $200, is the highest that I've seen. And all they're doing is saying, you said it was emotional support animal, and they registered on their website. There's no such thing as registering an emotional support animal. So they give them all these cards and things that mean absolutely nothing, and they've just been giving away a bunch of money.
Camille asks, can we ask a student if the animal is registered with EKU?
A service animal?
Yeah, I don't think, so.
No.
Well, service animals can't be, or sorry, we can't require that someone register their service animal with EKU. So the rule we go by is you can ask those two questions and that's it.
Yeah.
Because if they say no, either way, they don't have to register their service animal with us, so it really doesn't make any
And a
difference.
service animal, there are a lot more stringent laws because it is directly connected to a disability.
Right.
And so we can only ask those two questions, and if they say yes, as Laura mentioned, you have to take their word for it. But if you notice that their behavior is unlike a service animal, it's not attentive to the handler, if it's wandering around the classroom or out in the hallway, if it lunges at people, or if it barks, or if it runs up to love on people it doesn't know, that's not a trained service animal. And so you can report that to my office, and then we will look into it. And if, again, I think I mentioned earlier, if the behavior does not represent that of a service animal, we'll ask them to remove the animal from campus so it can have more training. Emotional support animals are covered under the Fair Housing Act. And so it's a little less stringent as far as the laws go and what we can, we can ask them questions. Of course, we have to get documentation that they, what mental health issue is. And that's what emotional support animals are for. They're for mental health issues, depression, anxiety, PTSD. So they're quite a bit different. And the reason we collect the information is because it needs to be protected. And so we have that ability to protect the documentation for the student and just verify with residents like that, yes, they have given us all the documentation information we need to approve their request.
So we can't ask for the ESAs.
Yes,
They're
it's
registered with
correct.
me.
Yes, just not a
It's just not a service animal. Any other questions?
If we have to turn people down before regarding the type of animal, turn down a chicken because they can actually transmit
Carry
diseases.
diseases.
Yeah, and boa constrictor, because they can eat other ESAs. So there are things that we say no to. Last semester, I got a request for a miniature cow. No.
No, we don't have room for that.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how a chicken would be,
No.
you know, supportive. But yeah.
Miniature cow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, what about helper monkeys?
Have you ever seen?
I have never seen a
I
helper
was gonna
monkey.
say,
I'm sure it could be an emotional support animal, but I've not had anyone request that here on campus. If someone does have a monkey here and I don't know about it, that means it's not registered and it needs to be registered with me. Now, and a helper monkey would depend on what they help them with. But it would have to be some kind of mental health component thing,
Right.
because the only thing that can be a service animal again is
it's a dog or.
is a miniature horse or dog, and we try not to let students know that they can have a miniature horse as a service animal. Although they're very cute, they wear little tennis shoes, so they don't make loud noises in the halls, and
Oh,
yeah, they have a little catcher that they wear harness if they have to go to the bathroom.
There you go.
so if they did, it would have to be registered as an
Emotional
Yes.
support animal, could not be a service animal. Could not bring your monkey to class.
That's right.
No. See if anyone else has any last thoughts or questions.
Think online.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for monitoring it.
no problem.
And I meant to say at the beginning, thank you, Rusty, and your team for arranging this. We appreciate it.
This session is being recorded,
Mhm,
so I
yes.
can imagine that maybe in the fall.
Yeah,
There'll be
bring it back.
people asking questions, those
Point 'em
questions
there.
seem to come up more. in the fall.
Yes.
Right, right.
They do.
I'm wondering too, if maybe we should think about either incorporating a version of this video or maybe a packet of information
Mhm.
for our
New
New
faculty, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Yes.
and
definitely.
the video might help, or if you have specific recommendations
Yeah.
for new faculty.
Okay,
That's likely
Yeah.
one way to get the information out
definitely.
earlier.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the commonly asked questions, those are the ones that we get the most, other than like very specific instances where an
Yeah.
animal is acting up, but
Yes.
And you can find a copy of the policy
Okay.
online and read through that if you want. It's-
Mhm.
In thinking about our population of
Yeah.
new faculty, or the regulations that we have at EKU, are they comparable to those of other campuses? I'm wondering about their familiarity with.
Yes,
They
but
should be,
yes,
yeah.
because all of the policies that we have are based on federal laws or
Right.
state laws.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to other universities.
Mhm. The service animal and training one, they may not be familiar with if they're coming from a university outside of Kentucky, since it is Kentucky specific, but otherwise they should be. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm Sarah, liked the, idea of sending around information
Okay,
early. So, maybe we'll follow up.
yeah, just let me
to
know.
the participants for this. I know some people
Yeah.
couldn't physically.
Absolutely.
They were gonna try to tap into the video, but,
Perfect.
that we could have some resources for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And if any questions come up, feel free to reach out to me, Kelly, both of us. We're here to help. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.